spring and I am desperate to draw some flowers. So let's revel in the new light levels. Crack out your favourite medium and come and draw along with me. Now the thing is that we've only just come out of lockdown and you cannot get a hairdressing appointment for love nor money. So my fringe that is normally here on my bonce is currently grown out and I haven't had a naked forehead for decades probably. I wonder if I should do it myself. Goose honking. Hello, it's Jules with another drawing video today. People are always commenting on my videos that they like my videos and they find them helpful. So can I please ask you to spend a millisecond and like the video yourself? Press that like button and then YouTube will know that you like it too. And if you want more drawing and book publishing stuff to come your way, then make sure you subscribe and ding the bell next to it. I make videos that come out every Friday and it's a perfect accompaniment for a fish and chip supper or pizza and salad or spaghetti bolognese and garlic bread. Oh no, now I'm hungry. I have drawn out on my layout pad a rough idea of what I'd like to see. I also have a very short quote for spring. If you're looking for an inspirational quote for an illustration that you're doing, sometimes it can be really difficult to find one that is short enough. So I have just gone for Hello Spring. I'd like to produce something that maybe is a bit more observational than perhaps my normal style would be. But as I am filming this before I've put any pencil on paper, who knows what it's going to turn out like. I've got an assortment of watercolour paint, water-soluble colouring pencils, I've got some fine liners and some soft pencils as well, and I've probably got my pastels knocking around as well. All of this is going to go on thick watercolour paper that is the smooth one, not the rough one with all the little knobbly bits in, but the smooth variety. However, if you like to use knobbly ones, then go for that. Even if it doesn't turn out perfectly, it's still going to be perfect for me because I am using this time just to be present in the moment where I'm doing some drawing. For me, there is something about connecting that pencil or brush to some paper that just makes me leave all my worries behind and stops me overthinking things. And all my worries and anxieties just evaporate. Maybe you should give it a try too. I've grabbed my layout drawing, my rough drawing that I did, and I've put it up against the window with a piece of watercolour paper over the top, and I'm just tracing it through. I do have a light box, but actually today the light was shining in my window and I couldn't see properly. So I went old school on it, and this is what I've ended up with. Now, before I do anything else, I'm actually rubbing out quite a lot of those lines, and I continue to do this as each bit I get to, rubbing out some of those lines so I can just barely see it, but I've got enough to work with the colouring pencils that I'm using here. And these are water-soluble colouring pencils. And this first flower that I'm drawing is a primrose. We get these little primroses between about mid-February to mid-April, maybe late April, maybe even into May sometimes. And they are really beautiful and they do signify the beginning of spring and summer for us. And as the little photograph showed you up in the corner there, they are a very lovely buttery yellow with a darker centre and then a very much darker little stamen in the middle. And they have these lovely fresh green leaves. So I've chosen a colour there that's going to represent that in terms of the brightness of the green, and also then a sort of like slightly darker sagey green just to show some of those darker shadow bits. And this is just really the first layer that I'm going to do because they are water soluble pencils. I can add some water to them just to mix and blend those colours a bit. And then onto some bluebells, which we have. There are two different sorts of bluebells actually. In the UK we have the native ones, which have a much thinner bell to them, And we also have the Spanish ones, which the photograph that I showed you just then was actually the Spanish ones. So they have a much bigger, fatter bell shape to them. But they are nonetheless very beautiful and lovely colour to go with all the yellows and those sort of fresh spring colours that you get this time of year. And if you go into a bluebell woodland at this time of year, it can be quite overwhelming to see the carpets of bluebells across the floor. They look absolutely amazing. So again, another springtime flower for us. And then if you're driving along the roads in a rural part of the UK, you'll see this little flower, which is the red campion. And I don't know why it's called red, because it is very definitely pink and not red. Who knows why they named it that, but there you go, still very pretty flower. And it's actually quite a dainty little thing. And it grows along the sides of the roads usually, or in a slightly shadier sort of woodland area. Again, a very pretty little flower. And then earlier in the season you get these crocuses. Quite often you get this purple colour, or you can get yellow ones, and sometimes some orange ones as well. So these are quite often the first flowers that you might see at the beginning of spring, alongside the little flower that I'm going to draw right at the bottom, which is a snowdrop. And I'm just making sure that I leave some of the paper there to show through the white, because the white is very important. It shows the reflection of the light that's coming off the sides of those. And also some of the crocuses do actually have this sort of gradient from a darker colour at the tips of the petals right down into the middle, where it's a lot whiter. Then grabbing a very fine brush, I'm just using water to mix and blend some of those colours, and then just getting a little bit of colour from my watercolour palette onto those to mix those colours too. And it's all a bit of an experiment really when you're using these watercolour pencils and the paints together, because you're never quite sure how they're going to react with one another, and it's always a nice surprise to see what happens. During this tutorial I did actually let it dry for a little while and settle, and then go back with some more colour, and you'll see that a little bit later on. And then, having used my very thin brush, I'm now have used also the fatter brush just to get some more blending going on in there before I drop in some darker colour with my fine brush again. Just using some magenta and some darker blues, and on the stems of those bluebells, they go from at the flower end there, the stems are purpley, and then they turn into green as they go towards those leaves. So it's a really pretty flower to draw and paint, and it's a very satisfying colour story. And again, with these ones, I've made the wet with the campion. I've made the middle of the flower very wet, and then just dropped in some very bright pink and crimson, just to make those middles stand out a bit. And you can see with just water, you can make quite an interesting effect, especially where I wanted it to be a gradient. You can mix those colours around and really sort of move them to where you want them to be. And then just a little bit of that darker purple just to show the edges, and a little bit of a sort of royal blue just to bring out some of those more beautiful colours. And I've mixed here for these snowdrops some bright green and a little bit of very bright yellow. And as you can see, you can hardly see the drawing at all, because what I wanted to do for these ones is just to it's almost like doing a negative. I'm just painting in the dark bits and letting the white of the paper do the work for the white areas of the snowdrop, because they are predominantly a white flower, with those little green bits in the middle are the stamen area. And I'm thinking, as I was doing this, I was thinking I might actually do a video on doing some negative painting in terms of painting things where you're using the paper more than you're using the paint to show through white things, maybe in something like perhaps a snowy scene or something like that. And then into the quote part, "Hello Spring." Doing this sort of lettering, it's a lot easier to use a pen, but doing it with a brush, if you just take your time and go back, whilst it's still wet, go back into what you've already done, and don't try and, with a pen, you basically can try and do the whole thing without lifting your pen from the paper. But with a brush, you need to go at it from different angles. So if you've got a pencil line underneath, try and follow that, but you can, of course, take your brush off the paper to make sure that you've got the right angles and to make sure you've got enough pigment inside your words. And this is a jelly roll pen. This is a size 08, just to put some little highlights on those red campions, and also in the lettering once the lettering had dried very, very, very thoroughly. And then the next day I came back and had a look at it, and I thought I would actually, now it's dry, I'm going to add some details around the flowers just to make sure that everything stands out properly and to make sure that you can see where all the details are, and also tighten up some of that lettering, because where you're doing it with watercolour, or where I'm doing it with watercolour, it does spread just a little bit more than it would do if I was using a brush pen or a fine liner to make these letters. So that's pretty much what I've used, apart from this my other pen ran out, so I'm using this micron pen, but they are both 005 in size, so the thinnest one you can get. And this is really helpful. I didn't go all the way around every part of those flowers, but just to give it just a little bit of detail. I think that works pretty well.
If you'd like further artist tutorials, I have a variety of short courses that will help you. There are real-time sessions looking at painting, drawing and marker pens, among others. And if you're keen on producing your own book, there is a more in-depth course on what you need to know about self-publishing a book with illustrations. And that covers making key decisions, how to make layouts and dummy books, rhythm and pacing, as well as several tutorials on illustrating your book, and a look at the tech. You can either hop over to my website or join me on Patreon for more information. Go on, give it a go!
Well, I think that turned out how I expected, and it was really lovely to have some peace and quiet just to produce it in. I love spring so much, it's such a relief after a long winter. And for us in the south of the UK, it's not so much about bitter cold and snow and ice and stuff like that. It's more about just long, relentless, grey, dark days. So I really enjoyed this beautiful sunshine and the blue skies today. It's been a very good day. My most watched video is planning your children's book, Get It Right First Time. Next week I am producing an updated version for 2021 with lots of new tips and hints and things that I haven't spoken about before. I've had a new idea for a book, so I'm off to write it down before I forget it. I'll see you next time. Nano nano!